Hello and welcome to Momento Malum today. In this episode, we'll talk about free news stories, followed by some plant ID, followed by a talk on different scams going on in apples. And speaking of apples, you'll be covering a few updates on the breeding project. Let's get started. For the first news story, as of May 31st, there's been heavy rains, which are now preventing the planting of, as a result, as of the writing of this article, everything's delayed in terms of planting. There's people trying to plant in corn, soybean, and wheat, alongside other pulse crops within Manitoba. The acreage estimated for dry beans as of right now is between 120,000 and 140,000 seed acres for Canada 2022. However, peas have been planted much earlier due to its greater resilience to colder temperature, and most of the seeded acres of peas have been planted. It will, however, take another 2 weeks to see the full results of this delay. For our second news story, a hepatitis A outbreak has potentially been linked to tainted organic strawberries. So far, the outbreak has sickened 17 people in the United States and 10 within Canada. The produce was distributed by the brand name Fresh Campo between March 5th and April 25th. As a result, these import strawberries are no longer available in Canada for purchase, and it's recommended that any organic strawberry from Fresh Campo or HEB are to be thrown away. In Canada, of the 10 reported cases, 4 were hospitalized. Now on to our last story. A small chain of Kubota dealerships owned by the company Earth Power Tractors is selling its company to 2 separate new owners. Deal and Sound and Meaford dealerships is being sold to Roar's Farm Equipment. The third and final branch of this company was sold to Stewart's Equipment. This headquarters is based in Staymore, 35 kilometers west of Barrie. The company was initially owned by Jim Kelly, who bought the company in 1998 with Jeff Cook. Mr. Kelly died in 2020, and as such, the remaining ownership of this company decided to sell their operation. And that concludes this section. Onto the ID. Welcome to the ID segment of our video. In this part, we'll talk about a few small compact ornamentals. We'll start with Aquilia canadensis, or the Canadian Combine. As you can see, it looks like a regular columbine, but the flowers are much less big and more salmon colored in nature. The leaves often have a blue tinge to them as well. This columbine is actually native to Canada, so if you ever want to grow an ornamental plant that's native to Canada, I would recommend this plant. Now on to the next plant, Delphinium exhalatum. These are a hybrid between 2 different species of Delphinium. They have large spike and are palmately lobed. As you can see by these flowers, they have a very maple-esque leaf, and the flowers are really nice looking as well. The flowers are typically bee pollinated and do have a slightly bee shape to them, at least in my opinion. And now yours. They're one of the very few bluish or very blue flowers available in common cultivation. So if you want something blue, this is a plant for you. Although I recommend being choosy because some of them are disease resistant, some of them are not. So you want to be choosy about which one to select and research ahead of time. Now on to Japanese bleeding heart, or Dencentra spectabilis. They have heart-shaped flowers and a red stem, as you can see right here. This is a great plant if you have acidic throat, because it's part of the blueberry family. If you do not have acidic throat, the plant will die, as we learned the hard way in my mom's front yard. So the moral of the story is, know your soil before you plant. Now on to the next one, Digitalis purpurea, or foxglove. These are bumpy and the flowers look very much like, well, a foxglove. Very lobed in nature. A really good plant if you can find it. And there's many different species of Digitalis that can be grown as ornamentals. You'll probably find an equivalent species suited to your environment wherever you live, making it a good plant to grow in general. Now on to the oriental poppy, or Papaver orientale. It's a poppy species with hairy leaves and fern-like leaves. It's a lovely poppy to grow, looks really nice. Although there may or may not be regulations depending on which poppy you grow, because depending on the heroin laws and opium laws. In my case, I live in an area where these poppies are a-okay to grow. That about covers everything. Thank you for watching. Now on to the story section. This time we'll talk about apple frauds, sort of. As mentioned in my previous episodes about sports, sports are varieties of fruit or vegetable or plant in general, formed from a mutated branch of a pre-existing variety that was then propagated. Such mutants fall not too far from the original plant, typically, and usually have only a minor change in traits. You'll be talking about 4 of such sports that are being marketed as something brand new and improved. Let's start with Breeze apples. Breeze. Now what is Breeze? Breeze is a trademark for a regular apple called Gala Fresh. Gala Fresh is a sport of Gala. The only difference between Gala and Gala Fresh is that Gala Fresh ripens 2 weeks before a regular Gala. Flavor-wise, it's pretty much identical to regular Gala. Now on to the Kiko apple. Its full name is Fuji Kiko Fubax. It is a sport of a regular Fuji apple. This sport gets a better color in certain climates. And here's the thing about Fuji apple sports, there are a dime a dozen. Some of them not even patented. And the Kiko sport pretty much tastes identical to regular Fuji. Now on to the last 2 cultivars, Manhattan Red and Joe Burn. And we'll cut to the chase. Manhattan Red is a sport of Braeburn that is slightly redder than a regular Braeburn. Flavor-wise, it's identical to a regular Braeburn, just a little bit redder. Joe Burn, which by name would be indicative of a crossbreed of Jonathan and Braeburn, is instead yet another slightly rare sport of Braeburn that tastes identical to a regular Braeburn. So in conclusion, these varieties are not brand new varieties at all. They are repackaging of pre-existing varieties, often with a minor variation in their traits. On occasion, sports produce a different flavor, but oftentimes it's just a slightly different color, ripens a little bit earlier, or slightly hardier than the parent cultivar. So if you want a Braeburn, Fuji, or a Gala, just pick those up. If you want something new, avoid these brands. Now on to another segment. This will be a brand new one. This will be just film footage of me walking around the farm that I have the trees on. This will be my first try at making a video of just making commentary of me walking around. Let me know if it works. As you can see, I showed off the Margil seedling that I purchased in cooperation with my 2 partners. Margil is one of the ancestors of Ripson Pippin, and by proxy, one of the ancestors of Cox's Orange Pippin. It is also scab resistant, hence why I chose it as a breeding parent. The air plant was Orleans Renette. Like Margil, it was selected for being an ancestor or relative of Blenheim Orange. In this case, it seems to have pretty good resistance alongside Margil, as I was unable to find any disease on it, specifically heavy amounts of scab lesions. On a side note, as you can see by the field, the perennial patches had not been weeded yet, but the annual patches have been. Both trees seem to be growing pretty well so far, and I should be able to make some brand new hybrids using these as parents. The main idea being using these parents as foundation stock alongside disease-resistant crab apples. The next apple on our hit list would be Pitmessin Pineapple. This is a seedling purchased. Much like the last two, I did not see any evidence of severe scab. This is to be used as a source of secondary resistance to fire blight, as this cultivar was found to be resistant to fire blight in a paper by Ian Uby. This will be covered in another video in the future, but nonetheless the seedling seems to have made the most progress amongst the many seedlings in our collection. It'll probably be used as a means of crossbreeding the foray cross of two crab apples, Margell and Orleans Rennet. After the foundation stock would be made, it would be crossbred with Pitmessin Pineapple. This brings us to Sweet 16. My first cross with Sweet 16 would likely be a cross between Pitmessin Pineapple and Sweet 16, since in this case, Sweet 16 is susceptible to fire blight, at least in some papers, and resistant to scab. Pitmessin Pineapple is resistant to both, however, making it well suited for crossbreeding. Now on to our last two cultivars. The first one we'll cover will be Golden Harvey. This is one of the oldest apples currently in the collection. In terms of age, it's as old as at least the 15th century, but possibly a lot older. And it's called Golden Harvey, as you can see by my ham-fisted attempts at showing off the tag. It's been in use for over 200 years, and you can see why due to its lack of scab on the leaves. These cultivars of old were selected for their extreme durability, so I hold out hope that they may be resistant to fire blight as well, although I would not know as there's nothing written about it since antiquity. This one right here got screwed up by a mouse, unfortunately. This one's Brownlee's Russet. It is likely a relative of Ashmead's Kernel, due to the latter being ranked as being moderately resistant to fire blight. I am hopeful it will be resistant as well. It seems to be making a comeback nonetheless from its injury. It has ornamental flowers as well as many other traits, such as scab resistance and a greater tolerance to bitter pit, a disease of low water and low calcium, which works well for me.